Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another AI news show. Today, myself and my co-host, Kevin Kieller, will be talking to Dan Sodergren, technology, future of work, and AI expert. And he's also a TEDx professional speaker and author. And we're going to be talking to him today about his book, The Fifth Industrial Revolution. It's a really hot topic and it's getting lots of interest. So he's here today and we're going to have a really good conversation. So stand by for a great show. Kevin, how's it going?
Well, it's good to be here as always, Rob. And, what's happening now is Microsoft Ignite. So there's just like a fire hose of new Copilot agentic information that's coming across the wire. So a very exciting week.
Yeah, indeed. And I did pick out one of Satya Nadella's quotes, but he actually did reference the original person that said this, but I thought it was really good. It was John Hogland from a quote in 1979. He said, "The trouble with artificial intelligence is that computers don't give a damn."
Yes, I remember that.
I love that. I think that was really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there was tons more, wasn't there? So today we're going to, talk through a little bit of news first and some of the kind of things in line with what's just happened around Ignite. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you today, Kevin, was about the first announcement. Around 70% of Fortune 500 companies now use Microsoft 365 Copilot. So is this just great marketing? What do you think to that?
Well, I think it's like with all statistics, right? It's kind of, they can be twisted and, this is true, which it's totally in line with, I think IDC did a study and said 75% of organizations are experimenting with AI. So what this doesn't mean is that 70% of the people at Fortune 500 companies are using AI. And in fact, if you look at, like, for example, BlackRock, which is the world's largest asset management firm, so an investment firm, and, Microsoft uses them as an example a lot of times. So they have 24,000 Copilot licenses, which is about 60% of their workforce. And 60% is quite high, because another company that's been on the stage, EY, and participating in a lot of Ignite sessions, now, they've both bought the most Copilot licenses of any organization, at least according to Microsoft, and that's 150,000 Copilot licenses, which is a huge number, but EY is huge. So that only represents a third of their user population. So once again, the Fortune 500, they kind of use 70% of everything. It means that, people are experimenting with AI and specifically Copilot. And, I continue to advise people that you should be experimenting. So it's good news, but it's also a bit of marketing for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure, because there was a lot of trial licenses given away, wasn't there, for several months. And I know I logged on the other day and it came up with a little window that said you can have Microsoft Copilot for 60 days for free, that kind of thing. So, hats off to them. It does sound like they've had mass adoption. They're not really giving away the numbers just yet, but it is prolific though, isn't it? Everyone's using some form of Microsoft Copilot, whether it's ChatGPT or another. So it's really great to see at Microsoft Ignite this week that they've had so much success with it. But it sounds like there's still a lot of work to do equally. What did you think to that, Kevin? Do you think, we've still got a long way to go with Microsoft Copilot and, kind of baking it into the portfolio, because it does feel like, I don't know, everyone's getting a little bit tired of the word Copilot now, but and almost a little bit confused, I suppose.
Well, I think, they're certainly, Microsoft has been very judicious, kind of in their use of Copilot. And so, there's lots of Copilots, and then other organizations have definitely picked up and called things Copilot. I think that, we've talked about it in the previous shows. Great time for experimentation. People are still struggling to figure out how to have it make a difference. And one of the great things that came out of Ignite was this Copilot analytics tool set, which, as Microsoft describes it, it allows you to connect KPIs that matter, like things like sales or cutting costs, to the use of Copilot. So arguably, you could look at a sales group and say, hey, are the sellers that are selling more using Copilot more? If that's the case, wow, that's terrific. We should buy some more Copilot licenses. So I applaud Microsoft for giving organizations the tools to track and measure the effectiveness. But, to your point, Rob, I think there's a lot of experimentation and a whole bunch of work to be done. And now, of course, what's coming out as well is this whole AI being agentic, which is a fancy way of saying, it could do, these agents that you create can do things potentially autonomously. So respond to common emails or, send yourself a weekly summary of important emails you received or the to-dos that remained undone, those kinds of things. And I think that is part of the experiment of figuring out how do we make it a day-to-day activity for people to leverage the power of this generative AI.
Yeah, lots of new buzzwords around agentic AI,
Absolutely.
AI agents, and now we got digital twins back. It's kind of almost gone 360, hasn't it? Digital
Yeah,
twins.
absolutely.
But thinking of digital twins, actually, there was another big announcement around Windows 11 being available on Meta Quest headsets. So it feels like the Microsoft and Meta partnership is kind of moving on some steps. And what do you think to that?
I think it's interesting. So, support for HoloLens. Now, that's the original HoloLens. So that ends at the end of this year. The HoloLens 2, which was the new and improved kind of Microsoft sponsored hardware, they're going to support that through December 31st of 2027. But with, kind of the Microsoft, hardware moving, they're not investing in that anymore. Yeah, I think that the MetaQuest, the partnership between Microsoft and Meta is improving. Microsoft has Mesh, which is still looking for a home in terms of, when does it make sense to have a meeting as an avatar? And so you need to have something like the Meta Quest to be able to participate in that. I mean, that still is very, very much an edge use case. I think even more experimental than Gen AI, where people are trying to figure out, are there particular business interactions that could flow more smoothly or be more productive if I was doing it in, VR. Very much the jury's still, I think, out on that, but it's, still it's nice to see, Microsoft exploring. I mean, I'm not sure like Windows. It is interesting when you can have you can have like almost infinite screens and giant screens. So it's like you can put monitors circling around you in VR. I'm not sure yet that it's ever made me more efficient, but it's certainly fun to try.
Anything to make me multitask, I think I'll give it a chance. But yeah, it was interesting and exciting. I do love the fact that they haven't just killed off their immersive strategy. I suppose with HoloLens, there still is this partnership with Meta, and I think that's really cool and interested to see how that goes. Another thing I wanted to talk about, and it's a little bit early to talk about Microsoft's Work Index because that normally comes out around May time. But I reflected on the May 2024 Work Index for Microsoft, which I always find interesting. It's a great study. But back in May, it was revealed that 75% of knowledge workers were now utilizing AI in their professional activities, primarily to save time, boost creativity, and concentrate on essential tasks. So there's some serious adoption, 75%. That was only 6 months ago. How do you see adoption playing out by the time Microsoft's Work Index is released next year, do you think?
Yeah, so I love that Work Trend Index. I mean, I think it's like 31,000 people that are surveyed by Microsoft. So it's some significant research, and it's across countries and different size businesses. And, they're very upfront what the methodology is. So I think it's a good piece of work. The challenge is in that study, what they say is like people are using AI, but that wasn't necessarily AI provided by the company. In fact, there was, one of the key messages, and maybe it was a bit of a marketing message as well, is, hey, if you don't buy people Copilot, obviously Microsoft wants you to buy Copilot. If you don't buy Copilot, the people are going to go out and, use some unsanctioned, perhaps AI, and maybe that's going to have corporate IP leaking out, right? There are, so I definitely think that there is a demand from end users to explore and figure out if this helps them be more productive. There was a whole bunch of stats there saying that people really felt that this was important for their job to stay up with this new AI technology. They also were also scared that, it might be coming for their job. There was a stat that said 66% of leaders, and I don't really believe this, 66% of leaders would not hire somebody without AI skills. So if that was what they were putting forth, you can see why regular employees would, by hook or by crook, want to figure out how to use this AI technology so that they can, maintain their gainful employment. So lots of great information there. And as we project ahead, I think that we're going to, as individuals and organizations, go through this experimental phase that we've talked about and figure out how to, for more of us, make it be a daily or weekly thing that improves our productivity. So I think that we're going to see increased adoption, probably more increased adoption of sanctioned, Gen AI tools in the Work Trend AI, the Work Trend 2025 index.
Yeah, really interesting study, as you say, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about more of the workplace trends as we bring Dan on in a few moments. But just before we do, we're just going to go through an AI minute with Kevin. Kevin, what is today's word?
So, Rob, today's AI Minute focuses on the term token. This comes up a bunch when we're talking about prompts, submitting your prompt. So, what is a token? Well, a token is a unit of text that an AI model processes. And this can be a word, it's often a word, but it also could be part of a word, a subword, or a single character. So, let's talk a little bit more about tokens. Tokens are then converted to numbers. So once things are tokenized, in this little image here, you see this input, and then each of the little color bands represents a token. This is the Llama 3 8B tokenization. There's different tokenization approaches. So these are then, converted to numbers, and that's what, the computer language, large language models work with. You pay to access most large language models based on the number of tokens. So this is why it's important. And so, for instance, a GPT-4o charges $5 per million of input tokens and $15 per million of output tokens. Different models have different pricing. But a lot of times, if you're a developer or using these models at scale, it's important to understand tokenization and what you're paying for them. And GPT-4o, because, we're talking English, but there's lots of other languages in the world. It was notable because, different non-Roman languages such as Chinese and Hindi and Arabic, it was much more efficient in terms of converting that language into tokens. So it meant that it was cost efficient. And last, the speed of an AI model is often quoted in terms of the number of tokens that it can process per second. So, for example, some of the leading models, GPT-4o, can process, at most 110 tokens per second. But to compare that, the typical human can at most process effectively 5 tokens, 5 words a second. So these models are pretty quick. So that's what a token is and why you should know a little bit about it.
Thank you, Kevin, the man with the knowledge. I love that. But very, very useful to know, I'm sure, especially if you're pricing up GPT-4o. But anyways, we'll move on from tokens to our special guest, Dan Sodergren, who is a tech expert. He's a future of work expert, and he's an AI expert. He's also been on the stage doing TEDx speaker sessions, and he's recently launched a new book, and that's why we're here. So welcome, Dan, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I absolutely love the start of the show, and I love that explanation of tokens. It's tremendously important. It's really funny. One of my startups that I had many moons ago, and this is many moons ago, the CTO and then another partner we work with explained to me tokens. And I was so adamant that this was a ridiculous idea and why would they work like this and all this other stuff. And now, of course, it of course is what everyone does when they do this. So my apologies. I won't say the name of the company or the CTO, but you were absolutely right 7 years ago. That's the only way you can do it. So my apologies. So there you go. We weren't all experts then, and that's the thing. So anyway, over to you, Rob.
Yeah, Dan, I mean, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into the book, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you do it.
Well, as I was just alluding to there, well, I wasn't necessarily alluding to the fact that I'm an old man, but I am an old man. I was alluding to stuff that I've done in the past. So I had the joy of working in digital transformation for the last 10 years. And, we might all be old enough to know that word was a thing before everyone just talked about AI. We all talked about the potential of this. And of course, then AI made a massive difference. I'm also really lucky because for about 20 years, more like 30. Good God, I am old. More like 30. I've known some of the kind of movers and shakers in the AI world before the AI world really existed. So I've been very, very lucky to know people like Demis and other people. But that's just by luck alone. Also had 10 years in marketing. I had another 10 years helping startups. I've had lots of different companies, had about 10 different companies, 4 of them being tech companies. Only one of them getting me onto a beach in Mexico. So, not that clever. And now I'm known really kind of on the BBC and other things as a tech futurist. But I always like to joke that I'd rather be called a billionaire philanthropist rather than tech futurist, to be fair. So tech futurist is only because I did things with augmented reality when it was things like Metaio and, when it was back in the day stuff like even before Blipper and all these other things and Layer and all these things. And it does make me smile, like Kevin, in your build-up and the other stuff you were talking about. You were talking about HoloLens and other things that people they don't even remember these times. They're kind of halcyon days of these kind of original moments. But, and to be without being rude about it, I did a lot of work in those spaces. But, I'd rather now be rich than be right. But it was nice to be right for quite a few decades. And it's nice to have been able to guess the future of work because that's what I now work in. So companies now pay me to do keynotes around AI, the future of work and technology, mainly because I've been doing it for a couple of decades and got it kind of right for a few of them. And so all that's kind of combined into this idea of the 5th Industrial Revolution, which is what I talk about in my book.
Fantastic. And just to kick off with the book, I mean, what inspired you to write the 5th Industrial Revolution?
I've always been really interested in just revolutions, revolutionary act. I started my own businesses way before it was fashionable to start your own business. I've always been a bit of an outliner, but I've always loved the fact that the world kind of and I almost got it tattooed to my chest, but I didn't realize how little I like getting tattooed. So I have a tiny, I think it's K as N. I don't even I've even said that right, but the Japanese way of getting small improvements over time, right? Yeah. 1% better every time, or whatever it is. That particular philosophy. There's another one called something like Kukugen, which is how things jump ahead massively. So it's not always small improvements. Sometimes it's a massive revolutionary change. Now, if I was a slightly tougher person, I'd have had that tattooed here. But I had the other one tattooed there, and it hurt so much, I refused to have the tattoo of the other one. So there you go. So I've always loved how human beings can fundamentally change and progress the world into a better place, right? And even though you might look at the world at the moment, you might think we're living in slightly dark times. We're not, actually. This is the best time to be a human being that's ever existed. Yeah. And the reason why this can sometimes be the case is because of revolutions. Because revolutions change things, and they change things fast, right? So you can have social revolutions or like social ones, like, I don't know, if you're looking at the 1960s and the kind of flower power kind of thing, that may have been a social one with the baby boomers, all that stuff. And then you've got things like economic ones. You could argue, during the agrarian revolution was a great example, but the same thing happened over in India when there's a huge economic kind of revolution. And then, of course, you've got the political one, which what people normally think about, which is like things like I was over in Paris the other day doing a keynote for a variety of extremely well-known brands in this secret keynote I was doing. But that Paris is a place of revolutions, right? Has a great history, French Revolution, all that shenanigans. And then, of course, the other one is technology. And technology, things like, and again, people sometimes misunderstand when they look back at history. They don't realise that actually that technology thing is often the thing that triggers the later revolutions. It's actually often, I'd be fascinated. If I had more time and maybe a different life, I'd write a whole book on what that whole proposition, what comes first, the political revolution or the technological one, right? You could argue that the washing machine massively helped the suffragettes movement. Another argument you could have for a variety of things. The printing press is a great example. Did the people who created the printing press realise it would potentially cause a Reformation? and potentially the Reformation potentially caused capitalism. So there's huge amounts of things that happen because of a simple technological change, right? But these things are never simple, and that's why that links into the whole kind of AI thing. We're in this world now where AI has happened and kind of happened to us. And I've been really lucky because in a couple of companies I started, one of them sadly didn't get funding because AI moved so quickly, because we were building our own small language model and a variety of things, which now ChatGPT can just instantly do by itself. So the investors could see that coming and we didn't get the money, but that was in HR tech. But this AI thing's happened to us. And I don't think people understand exactly how powerful this is. And change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. Your mindset's really important, right? So I think we've all got to look at this as the fifth industrial revolution. This is the same as us all working in the fields, and then suddenly a tractor turns up. But it's fundamentally that important, right? Before, human compute was the biggest cost for every business. Now, if human compute rapidly comes down to no longer be a kind of a moment, well, that changes everything. That doesn't just change. It's no longer business as usual. It's a brand new thing, right? It's a completely brand new thing. So the reason why I get so excited by it is because I think people misunderstand at the moment. They just think this AI thing is just a kind of piece of kit, which is quite exciting and might make them more productive. But what they're missing is, in certain areas, if you become, and literally I've done the works and the figures on this, you can look at some areas in work, marketing being the key one, which is why I wrote a whole book about AI marketing and how you can do it in a day, almost a day a month. And you could, instead of doing a month's work, you do a day. You can become 200, 400% more productive. Yeah. Now that means you become superhuman in real terms. That is the same as being a labourer in the fields and then suddenly becoming a horse, or suddenly becoming a tractor. It changes the fundamental nature of the employee contract. And people are missing, I think, and to be fair, that's what I get paid to do when I go and talk with companies, is leaders are sometimes just seeing this as a kind of a nice to have.
Right.
But employees, as you were saying, Kevin, this is the rise of the secret cyborg, right? One of the biggest problems you're going to have is no longer, can you remember the digital transformation pieces? People talk about, bring your own device to work. And, everyone had to have a BlackBerry. Can you remember those times? Oh, you have to have a BlackBerry because it's linked to our internet. Anyway, it's absolute nonsense. We all now take iPhones in. But of course, the next one is going to be bring your own AI to work. And I'm still astounded by the number of leaders that don't see this happening, don't realize it's happening in their businesses, but really, really key, they're not investing in the resources to stop the problems happening that are going to happen in the next couple of months, which will be, I'm sorry I used ChatGPT for free, but you didn't pay for it. And so you didn't pay for Copilot or didn't pay for whatever. Because people are now using their own laptops and their own AIs, I think there's going to be a fascinating world in the next 6 months where HR, law, lots of stuff has to fundamentally change. I talk to massive companies and they don't have an AI policy at the moment. They don't have a way of saying whether they should be using it or not. Now, we're 2 years down the line of this revolution, and as you say, adoptions times by 10 compared to what it used to be. Well, this is why I talk about in the book, artificial intelligence, one thing, emotional intelligence is the next one, organizational intelligence we need to have, and then the last one's independent intelligence, which organizations don't always like. But we need all those different intelligences to kind of get to this new world of the new Intel being, data and how you use data, and then agency. And I'm not, I always get a bit scared by this, but I see more and more companies, large companies, well-known companies, and their leadership isn't ready for this, and they've kind of put their heads in the sand in the last year or so and hoped it would go away. Well, AI isn't going to go away. It's just going to even if it doesn't get better and better, even if it stops its rate of progression now, what we've got right now fundamentally changes your business.
Right.
What we're going to have in 6 months' time will fundamentally change your workforce forever.
Well, and that's a great place to, you talked about mindset. And so, there are people that are, you talk to and they're either saying, well, this Gen AI is a fad, or it's just another tool like a calculator, so how do you suggest that, individuals and maybe more importantly, organizations adopt kind of a growth mindset so that they are open to the great opportunities that, AI can bring to them personally and their organization? How do you cultivate that?
Well, that's a brilliant question, Kevin. And I think that's why I'm calling it the fifth industrial revolution. so they understand, they've got that framework of saying, actually, it's not business as usual. This is an industrial revolution. Revolutions change things fast, right? And they'll because they can look back and go, oh, okay, the steam revolution. Oh, I saw what happened there. Oh my goodness, learn a bit in history. I mean, you'd even know it from common parlance, right? That, if you use the agrarian revolution, you say, well, if all your workers are in the field and then now suddenly there's a tractor, you guys have got to start learning how to use a tractor. Now they get that, yeah. Another way I do it is I kind of use metaphors, but I also demystify the whole AI thing. I think sometimes we can get too clever in technology, which is why, of course, as we know, digital transformation isn't about the technology. It's about the people.
Right.
It's about the people, right? The irony now for us, I think, in digital transformation is because of COVID and no one likes to talk about it, which proves how traumatic it was in the thing, because no one talks about it really as much as they should. Yeah. The pandemic was the world's biggest and most probably only global work experiment. Yeah. Where everything changed. Yeah. And look, people don't like to talk about it, but hybrid work is now a thing. It wasn't before. Something like 4% of people did this. I used to do remote work. I used to have to persuade people to do Zoom calls. It was hilarious. Then suddenly COVID happened and everyone did it, right? But we can't go back to where it was. Yeah. Now this changes everything, like work culture. It changes everything, like managerial positions. It changes. This is the thing about organizational intelligence, right? We have to realize that genie is not going to go back into the bottle. People are not going to go back. Just like people who have watched Netflix do not go back to having having a Sky thing or watching telly at 7 p.m. when everyone has to watch the same thing. We just don't. As human beings, we don't go back. Okay. But as leaders, they hanker for this pastime. And they look at things like productivity going down and they go, well, this is because, working from home doesn't work. Except ironically, they're the people that have been working from home for quite a long time. Yeah, because they are. The leaders of the companies have always been working from home, always been working flexibly. That's what they've been doing, right? But it's because it's taken as a privileged position because I'm the boss, therefore I can do this. Then they create these odd cultures, and massive companies do this, and small companies do it too. They create this odd culture where they then blame different generations for a lack of productivity. When actually it's just bad leadership. It's just bad management. Yeah, it's not working from home. Oh, well, I had to come into work at 6 a.m. I had to ruin my life and my wife hates me and therefore you should do the same. The irony is that with AI, that productivity they're looking for can be achieved and yet they're not training people how to use AI. So it's like a double irony. It's a double irony. And that's to do with not having a growth mindset. And that's to do with not being emotionally intelligent. And that's why I talk about in the book, emotional intelligence is just as important as artificial intelligence because in the end, it's human beings that will be using this kit.
So talk us through that. How does it complement the rise of artificial intelligence? Because I love the topic of EQ or emotional intelligence, but just talk us through that. How does that connect?
Well, I always think this bit's quite funny because I am not emotionally intelligent. I am the exact opposite. I am technically very good at what I do. I am not particularly emotionally intelligent. Luckily, I have people around me who are much better than I am at that. And sometimes I even ask the AI to become emotionally intelligent because I'm so bad at it. And luckily for me, AI can now be emotionally intelligent, right? It's a great thing. So there's two things really. There's AI itself, and we've got to be careful when we say AI because we presume it's just one thing when it's not. It's 5 or 6 different versions that are good at different things. And so therefore, I like to use the metaphor that AI isn't AI, it's actually automated interns. Like we've got to look at it like they're people, even though I know they're not people, but we really should look at it like that. So if we're going into them and we're not being emotionally intelligent enough to realize that every LLM is good at different things, then we're missing a trick. Claude is brilliant at some things. Mistral is brilliant at some things. Gemini is great at some things. They're all different. It's horses for courses. One of the biggest things I teach people is horses for courses. People don't use AI in the way that they use AIs, but if you had 5 people that worked with you and one of them was brilliant at creating reports, but rubbish at creating graphics, they're just different jobs, aren't they? And so you'd go, hey, I'm not going to make you do all of it because that would be stupid. You wouldn't just have one AI. You wouldn't have one intern. You wouldn't have one automatic intern. You shouldn't have one AI. Yeah. Anyway, and also, if you didn't train the intern, you wouldn't blame the intern. You wouldn't say, why is this output bad? Well, it's because you're bad. You'd go, I'm a bad manager. Same thing with prompt engineering, Rob. So to come back to your question, emotional intelligence makes you create better prompts. Okay? Because you understand that the way that people work and have to be managed for a better outcome is really down to you. That's emotionally intelligent. If you're not emotionally intelligent, you just write me a blog now. And it does, and it's crap. And you go, that is crap. Goodbye. Yeah. Now unfortunately, this is actually what's happened to a lot of people that have used AI. They used it 7 months ago, 10 months ago, whatever, and they didn't like it. And they said it's rubbish. But they never thought, actually, I don't know how to prompt. Yeah, I don't know how to use the machine, because this isn't the same as using a machine, because it's more like collaborating with a person. And so a lot of techies don't get that. And so they get a bit crossed by the whole thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I mean, I do a course on prompt engineering, and that's not a plug for that. I suppose it is. But, the point is that prompt engineering in most probably in a year's time might disappear as a skill set, because the AI might get so good it doesn't need decent prompt engineering. But right now it does, right? So emotional intelligence gives you, hopefully, the kind of the soft skills that ironically you need to make the machines work better, because they're not like machines. Okay. The other thing about emotional intelligence, Rob, is we've got to, as leaders, realize that we can't boss people into this revolution. We've got to lead people, and we've got to coach people, and we've got to generate goodwill and enthusiasm, and we've got to be involved in this process, right? But if you're not particularly emotionally intelligent, you just go, oh, it's okay. The kids will do this because it's new tech. The kids will do it that we employ, and it'll be fine. Now, you'd be amazed how many leaders of a certain age literally haven't really done this at all. They're not good at using AI, and they presume they can just hand it on to their employees, but also don't have an AI policy to tell them what to do. They're also a bit reticent about training them because they think it might be a fad. And if you're honest, if you're on the call and you're literally thinking this is a fad, I can promise you there'd have to be such a fundamental shift in the way that the world works that you'd have much bigger worries. I can promise you AI is part of the fifth industrial revolution so much that the only way really of stopping this stuff is capitalism fundamentally breaking down, also, or a nuclear war. That's the only way you're going to stop. And by the way, we shouldn't want to stop AI. We should want to stop it taking over the world. Again, this is, I don't know why people are so obsessed with this, but different cultures think of this differently. But, AI is like, AI, you could say AI is a bit like electricity in some respect. It's going to power this next industrial revolution. Yeah. But at the time when electricity first came out, people feared it then. They literally thought it would kill people, which it did, because people weren't trained in using it. So it literally did kill people. But they actually thought that fundamentally it would change society so much that those in power would use electricity to enslave society. Now you go Google it, or use your AI and find out. I don't know, you don't have to Google things nowadays, do you? Use Perplexity. Right? Hopefully that explains why emotional intelligence is important.
Yeah, no, that was a good explanation. But so now, futurist Dan, how do you envision the collaboration between AI and humans evolving over the next decade, right? So we're experimenting now, we're dabbling, we've got different works. Like, what does it look like 10 years hence?
I'll be honest with you, and I know most futurists don't like me when I say this. Any futurist that's predicting 10 years ahead is lying to you, fundamentally lying to you, because of this industrial change, right? This is not business as usual. 10 years ago, I most probably could predict 5 years ahead. Yeah. 5 years ago, because of the pandemic, we had a year of digital transformation in it. We had 10 years in a year, right? The old classic saying, but it's true. It's still, sometimes nothing happens and then all of a sudden 10 years happens in a year. Literally what happened to us, right? So if you've been in that moment there, you couldn't really have predicted. This next bit you can predict, but you actually, I know it sounds a bit weird, but because it's breaking Moore's law and loads of other stuff, you can't really predict what's going to happen next. Fundamentally, for every industry, it's going to be different. Yeah. So if you say 10 years, I don't think that's going to be true. I don't even like saying 5. I don't even like saying 3, because it depends on you as a business. Yeah. So how much are you adopting it? What I will tell you is you need to have organizational intelligence. You need to know very soon you are going to be doing more with less people. You are going to be. You're going to be employing superhuman or the equivalent of superheroes, because they're going to be twice as, can you remember we used to talk about 10 times developers? Yeah, this guy's a 10x, man. He's a 10x. He's a superstar. He's a rock star. But now it's going to be 100x. Yeah. Because that developer will be using AI to be much better at developing. Yeah. As Sam Altman rightly said, the first $1 billion business is around the corner, and that will be one person, because it'll be one person and a series of AIs. Yeah. That's happening now. Yeah. So you say, we're dabbling at the moment. Yeah, a lot of organizations are, but a lot of those organizations aren't going to exist. If you're just dabbling with AI, and I hate to say it like this because everyone gets like, oh, I don't think that's true, Dan. That's fine, because I have no skin in the game. I'm just a futurist. I'm just a technologist. I actually care more about society than people think. I'm not saying that I want this to happen, right. But you can see the same as thing. If you have a farm and you have 100 people, and then another farmer has 2 tractors, the guy with 2 tractors wins, but he might only have 10 people. Now, we have, as a society, have to think what happened then, and that's above my pay grade. My job is to help businesses transform using AI, leaders to understand what's coming in the next year, and it is the next year. And the next year is the year of agents. It's AI agents.
Right.
And AI agents fundamentally change the employee contract you'll have to create. Okay? So right now, it's like, are you incentivizing people to create good prompts and share best practice? Like literally 80% of the companies I talk to don't even understand that sentence. They literally, and I don't mean this, don't get me wrong, they're very intelligent people, but they're just not massive geeks, right? They haven't played around with this stuff enough to say, hey, you need a decentralized document where every marketing person on your team says, this is how you do, this is what we do with Dali, this is what I've done with Midjourney, this is a brilliant prompt for this. Now the question will be is, who owns that information? Who owns the intellectual property? And of course the answer, and believe me, I was in a room with some very, very powerful people, with some very big brands, like you'll know the names of them. They all said the same thing. In our employee contract, what you'll find is that anything done on that computer is owned by the company and we will sue anyone, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this is why people are going to leave your company. Yeah, because I get what you're saying legally, but you have to change. You have to be more emotionally intelligent than that. You have to incentivize people to give that information up. You can't just presume you own it. It's not an email. It's intellectual property that they've come up with and played around with. This is why I think, Kevin, people aren't admitting to using their own AIs and how powerful their own AIs are. Just imagine if you were really good at coding and you downloaded, I don't know if you Devlin, isn't it called? Or I don't know if it's that good anymore. There's the cursor. There's loads of these things, right? But what happens if you were, I don't know, a decent, comms person? I do a lot of work with comms and marketing. If you were clever enough to download Mistral, let's say, the French company's thing that's literally just done a whole new raft of changes, by the way. Just look at what they're doing today. You downloaded that into your machine and it's an open source thing, right? You're at a tremendous advantage compared to everybody else. Now, does that advantage mean that you will demand more money from the next business? And 83% of leaders will pay for people with more AI skills because they know how important it is, right? So this becomes a moment for your own business, but also for your career. And if you don't run the business, are you going to leave the business that doesn't do AI? Most probably, yeah. If you are, it's a bit like saying to people, we don't use laptops. We don't use email. No, but it literally is. Like I can remember going into businesses and I'd meet the CEO and they go, I don't do emails. I print them out and then my secretary deals with it. Okay? Those CEOs aren't CEOs anymore, mainly because they're all retired, because they're old, but also because they didn't have the right mindset. Now, what's fascinating is that might have taken 5 years, but you see the adoption curve with AI, it's not 5 years. You've got 2 years.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for the future of work-life balance, Dan? Is this, are we all doomed to, working with AIs for the rest of our lives, the ones that can work?
Well, I think that we're all doomed to work with AI is the same as saying, I think we're doomed to have a load of automated interns that do all the stuff that we don't want to do to make us more than 3 times more productive so we can spend more time with our families and friends.
Is that doom?
To me, that sounds quite nice. So the reason why I push this agenda so much and I talk about it so much is because I think this makes the world a better place. I don't think it makes a horrible dystopian world where it's the exact opposite, right? And the reason why we have sold this narrative that this is a bad revolution is actually because this is a people's revolution. The revolution's actually us, right? We can all use AI. People misunderstand. The cost of AI has rapidly come down whilst it's got better, okay? So you could do stuff of a madman's dream of literally only 5 years ago with tens of dollars compared to hundreds of thousands of pounds, right? Now, the question is therefore and this is why the last chapter of the book is called Independent Intelligence, are we at the stage in our lives where we can have that independent thought enough to realise how important this moment is, right? So I don't work as hard as I used to, Rob. I don't at all, right? My marketing work, I can do it in a day, and I do it in a day. But then I see my daughter more. I stop work at 2:00 in the afternoon. I see my friends more than I ever did. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, the world becomes a better place when you see your friends more and you go outside more and you walk more and you talk to your dog and, you're part of community more. But I hope it is. Now, does that mean that the world of work and management becomes better for them? If they're emotionally intelligent enough to say, hey, I don't care how you do your job. I just care about the outcomes. Yeah. Then it's in their interest to make you happy. And if that means that you do a 4-day work week, it's known that happier employees create better results. Yeah. So a 4-day work week. What happens if that goes down to a 3-day work week? How much better is your life if you're only working 3 days a week? Now, some people will literally say, no, I want to work 5 days a week in an office and I want to burn myself out because I'm obsessed with money. And they will. And that's, good on them. Except the new world, I'm hoping, doesn't reward them as much as it used to. Because actually, you can work smarter rather than harder. And if you all collaborate together, what you can do with AI means actually you can all have more time off. And I think that's exciting because I wasn't put on the planet to work to make money. That sounds very hippie-ish, but like beyond a certain amount, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I think we've all got to realize in society that when this revolution happens and as it occurs, you're going to have people that want to hold on to the past and they want to work 9 to 5 and they want to, be heartbroken and they want to have to buy stuff because they need to consume stuff to fill an ancient void that cannot be filled, But other people will go, brilliant, I don't have to work 2 days a week. And those are the people that will use AI. Absolutely.
Well, I love this topic, and I think we could go on and on and on about this. This is a really, really, interesting subject for everyone right now in our personal lives and in our work lives. So, but I am afraid that's all we've got time for today. Kevin and Dan, it's been great talking to you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's been great to be here. Thanks for having me. If you want to find out more about the talks that I do on AI, technology, and the future of work, have a look at dansodergren.com. You can talk to a variety of agents. They are real people, by the way. It's not an AI system there. They are my real agents. But also you could find me on LinkedIn. And that, again, is Dan Sodergren on LinkedIn. Again, that is the real me. Next year, I promise you, it will still be the real me. That's not going to be taken over by AI, not just yet.
Well, we're going to put some links down below, so do have a look at those. Thanks to everyone for watching our AI show. If you've got some good takeaways from today's session, do give us a quick mention on social. And you can connect with Kevin, myself, Dan, and as I mentioned, all the links are down below. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.